Good evening. I'm here to present my cross-cultural leadership analysis for the LDRS 452 with Dr. Wu. Let me go ahead and go to presentation. Oh, sorry, present. And here we go. I included a table of contents. I'm going to address the background and setting, questions exploration, cultural factors in leadership behavior, analysis and values of the cultural setting, feedback, the existing model, the ideal model, and I included the working towards an ideal model of that cross-cultural leadership. Here's my background and setting. I did choose the American public school setting for what I want to address. Some of the significance includes this citation from Song. With multicultural education, we could elicit changes of the roles of students in educational contexts. Again, more of the research, and you'll see in my presentation, more of the research is indicating that the American public school setting, and for the fact all school settings, are increasingly becoming more ethnically diverse, more culturally diverse, and I think we have to stay ahead of that trend in order to make sure we provide the best educational possibilities and outcomes for those students. Here's another citation. Expressing diverse cultural backgrounds through the activities in the classroom may allow students to develop a greater appreciation for diversity and multiculturalism. We want those students to recognize and acknowledge the fact that they're not the only ethnicity represented in their social group or in their community group, and that they should actually embrace and potentially seek out various cultures and try to gain that understanding related more so into the cultural IQ, that CQ drive that we need. Some of the key players that I will be addressing include the principals, who kind of promote that teacher time and curriculum for multicultural implementation. The teachers who recognize the importance of cross-cultural education and appropriately provide activities for students to develop that cultural awareness. And then the community itself. How diverse and open is the community to embrace these opportunities for multicultural, cross-cultural awareness? Some of the questions and exploration I wanted to begin with is how can we address multicultural education in the American public schools using the key players to make a meaningful impact for students? And my citation, or I kind of guess you can say my evidence for this, includes the fact that students of color make up 1/3 of our nation's schools, while people of color comprise of only 13% of the teaching force. So there is that disparity between what students are seeing in terms of educated professionals and what their community and the school context is having at the moment. The increased number of students of color is expected to rise significantly, where over half by 2020 will be of different ethnic makeup other than white. And important to note here, teachers of color is not expected to increase. So a very minimal to limited increase. How do we make sure our teaching force, our teaching professionals are setting that example for students of color and various cultures and ethnic diversities, cultural diversities? How can we model, given the staff, how to appropriately embrace multiculturalism and have that impact? And I'm going to go further into some of those details of how we give feedback for the community and those students where it is meaningful. I'm going to first begin with the cultural factors of leadership behavior, and I'm going to be using Preskill and Brookfield's leadership practices as kind of a baseline for identifying those variables, cultural factors, and trends for multicultural education in the public school system. I wanted to start with saying that because of the increased diversity trend we saw in the previous slide for public school students and the limited increase of public school educator diversity, one of the things I believe leadership needs to focus on is learning to be open to the contribution of others. Preskill notes that Leaders have that special responsibility to, excuse me, practice an openness that allows other groups, and this could include various multicultural groups, to entertain that range of perspectives that we may or may not have seen, given maybe our limited scope of cultural inclusion or CQ, things of that nature. So I think if we allow that opportunity for openness, for ideas and contributions from all sides of and perspectives, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, I think that can give leadership that upper hand to encourage those kind of ideas to make the organization better. Some of the variables I did include are, teacher and community openness and exposure to multiculturalism. Maybe they have that limited scope or that low CQ that kind of make them shy away from it. The leadership vision and the steps needed to achieve multiculturalism. Again, if the vision or lack of focus when it comes to promoting these ideals aren't necessarily in line, this could be a hindrance, along with just the student population in terms of their diversity. If school makeup is 80 to 90% white, or even it could be the other way around, where it could be 80 to 90% Hispanic. I've worked at schools in that other side of the aisle. This could be a limiting factor when it comes to contributions and openness of others. And we have to definitely look at the community and promote that outreach, where we can say, look, this is our school community in and itself. How can we include more diversity, or how can we seek to make sure that other cultures are represented, not only in our local community, but within possibly the city or our major city, or what students are going to see outside of our school. Another one to address that same question, using pre-skills and Brookfield's leadership practices, are learning to support the growth of others. And citation includes, when people are growing, they continue to learn and see their efforts are making a difference for others, and the overall effect is positive for the entire community. I strongly feel, as studying educational leadership, I want students and I want teachers and people at the district office to put people in positions where they are successful, not only because of what they can offer, what they can do, but also that face of cultural diversity, of ethnic diversity. I think we need to see more various ethnic diversities in positions of power where they are making a difference. I think we need to see various genders. I think we need to have a more inclusive environment where students can see that just no matter what ethnicity they are, no matter what gender they are, they can be put into positions of authority and success because of it, okay? Some of these variables include teachers and student ability level in the subject matter that warrants appropriate growth. I don't want to throw a student or possibly a teacher or anyone in that matter to be focused on, to be put in a position where they're going to fail. Now, are there opportunities to fail where you can learn? Absolutely. Preschool talks about that, learning to reflect. However, I also feel that we need to make sure that we're given the tasks where they can rise to that occasion and be successful, even if there are moments where they could have done something better. Opportunities within the curriculum and professional development for teachers to highlight mastery. I think there could be moments where if we're not setting them up for success, how are we going to make sure that they can take the initiative to find in the curriculum or in their own successful professional development, how can they continually improve upon themselves, that they can highlight their mastery? And lastly, I think we definitely need a forum for leadership to acknowledge the growth of the student population or the teachers and the community that's accessible for everyone. How can we support the learning and growth of others? How can we highlight achievements and success if we don't have that appropriate forum or we're not syncing schedules right with the community. Lastly, and this is crucial for any public school setting, private, anything of that nature, is creating that community, that culture of working together. And again, preschool Brookville site, community is about the power of collective thought and action, demonstrating how much more can be accomplished in a cohesive group than can be by the lone individual. We need to create that culture where community is key first, and then along with that, noticing the diversity within the community and what each other can contribute to it. Some of these variables could include that appropriate vision or plan that utilizes communal qualities and resources. Some leadership can be completely naive to that. The willingness of the student body and teachers to commit individually to that greater communal vision. There are some teachers, and I address it later in the slideshow, where they may have potential biases where they don't feel that this is beneficial. And we need to get away from that mindset and focus more on building that community where ideas can flow and we can, in a sense, steal and recreate things that are successful from people's experiences. I think transparency within the process is important to limit ulterior motives, for the community can feel safe and comfortable for the fact that the steps that we're taking to get to where we need to be in terms of the vision, I think is important, where transparency is needed. And then the results and who benefits them. Again, that's part of that transparency. And I think for the community to have that buy-in, they need to see the fact that this is benefiting the community and not necessarily just the school, just this student subgroup, just these teachers. The results need to be shown for the community. So we move on towards the analysis and values of the cultural setting. I start with the American values because I'm specifically talking about the American public school system. And Lewis did a wonderful citation where he says that this American values namely start with the speed. Speed is of the essence. Acting individually for your own interest. We tend to be self-reliant and not easily cede to what we've claimed and owned. This is going to be tough if we're trying to build leadership through communal processes and getting the teachers on board to share these ideas. Oftentimes, especially earlier in my teaching career, I did feel that sense of selfishness and wanting to do better and keeping all my ideas to myself and teaching strategies. And I noticed I'm only in my 8th year of teaching, but I feel that I've done a complete 180 where I've kind of gone away from, I guess you can say, these American values, where I think we as a collective need to see that these are our students, every single student from kinder to 5th or kinder to 8th, kinder to 12th, where I need to be sharing more of my ideas in pedagogy. And it goes against these American values. And I think that that's going to be a crucial step to especially for maybe teachers that are younger in their career, where they need to kind of split off and say, hey, look, whether you have the lowest test scores or highest test scores, what are you doing that we can recreate that is successful? So the American values has a huge influence under that cultural setting. And where maybe we, in terms of leadership, where we see certain subgroups not succeeding appropriately, we don't allow them to fail. And we don't keep that American value of just, you're on your own, buddy, into, hey, how can we support you? That's going to be a huge emphasis for leadership to kind of get away from, and the community to kind of get away from. Definitions of success in an academic setting. This has been debatable, and some of the research I've seen, they also kind of find it hard to pinpoint exactly what defines success in the academic setting, because it could be as qualitative or it could be quantitative. I focused mostly on the quantitative, where Is it completion of high school, of college? Do you have graduate or postgraduate training? Is that the definition of success? Is the grade point average the definition of success? And this is where, more, and especially because I'm in the elementary field, is growth in academic subjects a definition of success? That's what I kind of emphasize to my parents at the moment. Is appropriate employment after completion of an academic institution definition of success? We have to look at, I think, all those kind of values and address this with the culture, within the cultural setting, especially leadership. How do we analyze success? Is it going to be that qualitative? Is it going to be that quantitative? And you'll notice a lot of the school districts, they have within their vision and their mission statement kind of a mixture of both. Okay, they're going to have that where all students that go through the school district will be, successful and independent individuals that can contribute to society. They often have something of that nature, and then they back that up with, high academic rigor, strong excellence in extracurricular activities, things of that nature. And then they highlight the more quantitative kind of things. So leadership definitely has to pinpoint exactly what defines success within their school site or academic setting. Lastly, multiculturalism in a public school setting. I found this, and it says that the U.S. Department of Education recognizes that knowledge of the changing demographic conditions in schools, though challenging, can aid such institutions in their response to change. Again, we need to recognize that multiculturalism is only growing stronger. Our ethnic diversity, our populations constantly changing, if not getting more and more diverse, which makes America somewhat unique. And I think the PowerPoint did cut off. It did, so let me bring this up. My apologies. I'll fix it before I turn the actual presentation in. But this ultimately says, as the trend continues for increased diversity in public schools, students are continuously exposed to various cultural differences. Thus, the public schools have a need to respond appropriately to this change. I think, especially using taxpayers' dollars and representing those cultures. Representing those cultures within the community, we have to do our due diligence to make sure they're being represented and analyzed from within this. Some of the feedback that we get in terms of those three key players, the principals, they get yearly evaluations from the district office. They have ongoing formative feedback from teaching staff, such as surveys, union meetings with the union reps, school site council. There's opportunities for that feedback, and there's obviously the more quantitative testing data. Teachers, they have evaluations from their administrators or peers. They have their classroom growth they can look at from assessments or state testing data, and they have community feedback through school climate surveys, feedback from families, etc. Community and students, they have grades, feedback, both formative and summative assessments. There's chances for awards, citizenship, academics, and then peer feedback, whether it was officially facilitated through in-class discussions and feedback, or it was unofficially but amongst their family or their friends and things of that nature. However, you do notice when it comes to the feedback system, where is the feedback for promoting multicultural education and responsiveness within the school sites? It's a mixture of everything, but then there's not something specifically highlighted. And I'm going to go further into addressing that later in the presentation. So my question now leads to, how can leadership appropriately measure and give feedback to success in cross-cultural education and practices? This is where we're going to go into what is currently happening and what ideally what we would like to see happen. So some of the existing models of cross-cultural leadership, principles, they may or may not have exposure to multicultural proficiency in the school setting. This is something new that maybe they're starting to experience or see. Therefore, there's a lack of resources from the community to implement this. Okay, they're going to have to he or she's going to have to search it out purposefully, and we can talk about that later on. And there's sometimes minimal buy-in from teachers or students to recognize that benefit. Again, there's where the added research needs to come in to play for students and teachers to recognize that, hey, this can be helpful to address inclusiveness, better the school climate, and ultimately get better testing scores or in terms of students just wanting to be at school and feeling appreciated. For teachers, there's a lack of appropriate curriculum to teach the students multiculturalism. Teachers sometimes rely on at least something to get the ball rolling in terms of introducing a new topic, especially something as multiculturalism or cross-cultural examples. It's kind of hard. It's like, do they have to seek it out themselves? And this is where you'll see in the last part, that last bullet point, I'll kind of address where these biases may come into play. Limited values and examples within the community for cross-cultural resources and acceptance. If the community is wholly, the same, maybe the community itself isn't recognizing other cultures within the city or the county, and we need to see how we can bring in those other aspects of it. And lastly, I think this is most important, especially for teachers. There's a potential biases to present multiculturalism in an appropriate manner. Some of my views, especially I remember from this class taken in the beginning, some of my views, like from the IAT, that might interfere with how I present certain things. And I think it kind of starts with maybe including a training where teachers can recognize some of their biases and preferences for gender, race, religion. I think it maybe starts with them realizing that their own faults or their own biases, and then focusing towards how can we better model cross-cultural leadership within their own lives, let alone the lives of students or their administrators. The community, there may be, again, minimal exposure examples of cross-cultural interactions and models. There could be limited buy-in for multiculturalism in a public school setting. That's huge because some families or some community leaders may deem that this is something that needs to be taught not in public schools, but outside within the community. But then you're adding more elements and variables where it's going to take that away from the teachers and onto the families, where there could be, again, more potential biases and outright racism that could take place. And then there's also just that general lack of knowledge that, the benefits of multiculturalism on society. I think just there's no lack of awareness, essentially. So those are some potentially existing models of cross-cultural leadership from all three stakeholders, from all three key players. And then now we're going on to the ideal model, where for the principals, ideally in cross-cultural leadership, they are knowledgeable with examples of multicultural schools with success that can be replicated. Again, a lot of education, good teaching is essentially stealing. You're going to see what schools are doing well with a possibly similar population. What are they doing that we can replicate? And I think principals teachers, the community, everyone needs to put themselves out there where they can see success taking place and they can reflect and think about, okay, how can I bring that to my campus? Various community resources are available to promote cross-cultural education. Principals are actively seeking out those ways to demonstrate and model, hey, this is something from the Korean culture. This is something from, this is a folk dance from Germany. There's so many ways where principals can include these within their schools that teachers and students and the community itself can be invited to and see what else is out there. Teachers and students recognize the community and its benefit from multicultural proficiency. And the principals were able to relay this through their school and through the initiatives from the vision, the mission statement, the district office. For teachers, the curriculum is available that makes it relevant and can address the various standards. As teachers, we make it kind of a hill to die on, that we're always teaching the standards. Now you're bringing in this multicultural curriculum or cross-cultural curriculum. How is this helping me address the standards for my grade level? Well, principals and the district office has provided those things for teachers to use. That's going to benefit the students and their learning, along with promoting that multicultural education. Again, the teachers can highlight examples from within the community that role model the differing ethnic backgrounds that are present. I think, again, every child, every student, they need that role model. Other than their teacher, they need that role model to see, hey, because I'm a female, what are my role models? Because I am Black, what are my role models? Because I am Asian, what are my role models? Because I'm a Christian, what are my role models? They need to have those in order to promote that inclusivity from within others, especially those that have that biases or potential racism in their background. And again, teachers, they need to have limited biases on cross-cultural perspectives, and that helps implement that vision. From the community, there's multiple examples of cross-cultural interactions and models in the community. Again, it's inclusive. They can see it. It's there. It can be as simple as an ethnic supermarket to celebrating, for example, Chinese New Year. And they have a parade, they have a festival, they have places where it can be seen, tasted, appreciated. Active in the education sector for promoting multicultural values. Not only is the principal seeking it out, but the community wants to be inclusive within the school sites because they want to bring in families and they want to bring in their culture to other people that may or may not have been exposed to it. Lastly, and the community embraces increased knowledge for the benefits of multicultural proficiency. They want to see it happen. They want to see more exploration and acceptance of various ethnicities within the community. And I think we're at a tipping point where this is happening, this is not happening, this is embraced, this is, we draw the line. How can we continue to make that happen within our school sites? Lastly, and I feel like this was what I've kind of reflected on while doing this presentation, this PowerPoint, working towards that ideal model, I found I kind of nailed it down to 4. I want to recognize the trends. If I'm a principal, I want others, my staff, the community, to recognize the trends in research, citing the importance of multicultural proficiencies in education. A lot of people felt, especially for me in my classroom, some of the families have felt that multiculturalism is something that needs to kind of stay out of the classroom. And in reality, especially with some of the texts that the students study, it absolutely needs to be in the classroom. The students need to see authors of various ethnicities and backgrounds. They need to learn the history of the United States and learn the histories of other cultures through text and through close readings and analyzing and working on their skills. And I'm talking about 3rd grade. I'm a 3rd grade teacher, but I still emphasize that importance for my students and for their families to see that, look, there's so much out there that isn't just American values or American culturalism or American culture, but others as well from out there. You need to see the importance of learning those things so you can have that other perspective, that other side. When I was working on my master's research and case study, again, Dr. Hansen, she emphasized that there's a lot of that philosophical perspectives and outside influence or outside influences from other countries where they do the same thing that we're doing but differently, and therefore it brings about that different perspective. And I feel that, if anything, I learned that we have to look at how others are doing it and what we can replicate that can maybe give us that different perspective. So I see number one as truly important, because it starts with changing that mindset that people need to have. Number two, I think this goes specifically into leadership for principals, but also for teachers and within the community. We can utilize those leadership practices to set and build that appropriate culture for the community to embrace multicultural education. We need to learn to be a community and work as a community, because without the community's backing, it makes each one of those steps harder, and that culture of acceptance and learning about other ethnicities that much harder if it's not there. Um, Number three, I said to expose oneself to various schools, both in and outside the district, to demonstrate who demonstrate a diverse demographic to support students with cross-cultural competencies. Again, I emphasize this, and it's just good teaching. It's just good leadership. You need to see other successful schools. You need to see other successful organizations that are doing things a certain way. How can you replicate that within a given, demographic similarity, and even the differences? How is a successful organization or school site different than yours, but is successful in a way that you also want to be successful in? That's such a good question to reflect and to bring about and discuss on the table for other teachers and community members to see how can we model and replicate that. Lastly, I think we need to encourage students to build their CQ, their cultural competency, with opportunities to travel and study abroad. This is a little more specific, but even with my third graders in my own profession, I try to make it a point every now and then to say, hey, look, we need to recognize the various ethnicities we have within this classroom, and we also need to explore how else we can live through each other's experiences. And it could be simply by traveling. If you don't have those means, it could be through literary text, just reading a book from a different culture, from a different author, and seeing that perspective, or even just learning different words from different languages. I think those little tiny steps can really, truly promote students to embrace those kind of things. So with that, I just have my references from some of the things I got ideas from. And again, I hope you appreciate my presentation about cross-cultural leadership analysis. It was interesting to do because it reaffirmed some of the things that I felt are important, along with some of the ways that I can, especially if I do pursue leadership education as a principal, what are some of the things I can do to kind of influence the way I can build my vision and my culture of the school. Thank you very much.